Clean version.
Does God objectively exist?
God does objectively exist.
Okay, how?
We can reason to the existence of God.
How?
Okay, so would you like to hear my reasoning now? Because that's what I was trying to get into earlier.
Yeah, go ahead with the argument, sure.
So before we do that, can we set down some terms, right?
No.
No?
Just give the argument.
Okay, just give the argument. Do we both agree that there are causes and effects in this universe?
What's the argument?
What do you mean, what is the argument? This is the argument.
Do you have an argument?
Yes, this is the argument.
Okay, what is the first premise?
The first premise is this, that there are causes and effects in the universe. And if the second premise is, if there are causes and effects in the universe, and we trace that all the way back, then either there are two, how you say, places we can go. The first is there will be a first cause, right? The second is it will go on for infinity. Now, my third premise, my point, is that it cannot go on for infinity, but it must have a first cause.
What's the argument for the third premise?
What do you mean, what's the argument for the third premise?
What's the support
Yes,
for the third premise?
Yeah, so it can't go on for infinity due to the fact that something that we have termed as infinite regress, right? If it goes on for infinity, then we can have no effects because there are no causes, right?
Well, that's the claim, but what's the argument for that claim?
That isn't the claim, that's the argument. The claim in that would be the claim in that would be that it can't go on for infinity.
Am I going crazy here?
I don't know.
For infinite regress being a problem, bro, what's the P and not P?
Yeah, is there a contradiction there? Is there a proposition and its negation for an infinite regression?
There is. If it goes on for infinity, then there is no effect, right? Because there is no cause.
Well, that doesn't follow.
Why not?
Because an infinite series of causes has infinite effects. Like, I don't see how that doesn't follow.
But there can be no effects because there is no start to it, right?
Well, that doesn't follow.
Running the contingency argument?
So, no, my point here is this.
He's running the infinite regression contradiction somehow, but he hasn't provided a proposition or negation.
I'm asking you this. What is an effect?
Wait, you're saying there's an issue and saying there's an infinite number of causes?
Yes.
What would that issue be?
That there would be no effects.
And why would you say that?
Because if there was an infinite amount of causes, and if we go on for infinity, then there is no starting point to cause, right? Because cause and effect is change.
Well, it follows that there is
no change if there is no cause.
Well, look, it's true that there's no first cause. It's going to be true that there's causes and there's effects.
But how?
Because it's stipulated. The view is that there's an infinite series of causes. Causes are what precede effects. So to have a cause means there's an effect. So on the view that there is infinite causes, that you can't divorce causes from effects, right? There's not a world where there are causes and no effects, right? Causes precede effects. And they're like, right, they're kind of like logically wedded. So in a world where there's an infinite series of causes, there's no first cause, but there are causes and there are effects, right? There's an infinite number of them.
But how are there causes if there was no first cause? That's my point.
What do you mean how there would be causes?
So again, cause and effect. Effect is a chain.
It sounds like that question is
cause, right?
presuming. Yeah, it sounds like you're presuming that there's something that's starting the chain of causes, right? But the view is that there isn't something that like enacts the causal chain, right? It's just that there's a series where the series spans infinitely in the past or backwards, right? On that view, your question is just incoherent because it presumes something that's trivially false of the view being that there's a first cause. Right?
No.
The question is just, what do you mean, how would there be causes?
No, because you understand, right? That if there was an effect, right, that means the cause must be there. Now, again, I agree with you. You cannot divorce effect from cause. But what I'm saying is, if, again, effect is change, how can there be change if there's no change in the beginning, right? Like, that's my point. There must be something that pushes that.
It's saying there's no beginning, right? The view is that there is no beginning.
I understand. That's the claim, that there's no beginning. But if there's no beginning, then there can be no effects. You understand that, right?
Of course I don't accept that.
I understand you don't accept it, but that's the logical conclusion it gets to. If there are no effects...
I'm not seeing what's the logical reason to say something like that.
There is an infinite amount of causes.
And why would there not be effects if there's an infinite series of causes?
All right, so let me try to explain.
I don't know. You're just saying something contradictory there.
If you have
you realize.
What do you mean?
Well, you're saying we agree that there's causes under the view, right? And you've agreed that it's logically impossible to divorce causes from effects. And you're saying on the view that there are causes, there aren't effects, right? And since we agreed it's impossible, right? You're just affirming an impossible view, right?
No.
The view, namely that there are causes and no effects. That's not possible.
What I'm saying is,
well, then we agree if the view is that there's an infinite number of effects, then or causes, then there's an infinite number of effects.
No, what I'm saying is, if there are causes, right, then there must be effects. But if there are no effects, right, which is change, then there also could be no cause. That's why I'm saying infinite cause. Or
but we're talking. But the view we're talking about is a view where there's infinite causes.
Well, it's an illogical view. That's my point.
You're not displaying
Logic,
like you're not displaying how. You're just saying under your view it's not possible. But
because there's no change, right? Again,
what do you mean
effect
there's no
is
change?
change.
No.
What do you mean?
In the view of infinite
on,
regress, there is change and there is cause.
Yeah, what are you
How
saying?
can
There's
there
no
be change
change.
if there's no a change? You understand what you're saying? If there's change, right? Where is that change coming from? There's no
Cause
change.
and effect.
I understand that you're just saying that, but where is that change
Have you heard? Okay, have you heard of the like?
Yeah,
let's
look,
just
the
get a
view
little
is that
more-
for every object that changes, its change has a cause, right? Some antecedent cause. So there's a function for everything that changes as a preceding cause, right? And it seems like if you have like a type of foundationalist view about like the series of causes, right? Like a finitist view about causes, then the first thing happens and there's no preceding cause. That seems like the problem you're raising, which is only sensitive to your own view. On the view that for every instance of change, there's a preceding cause, then you get an infinite regression, right? Because you get this like Hume-Edwards satisfaction, right? There's no object in the series that goes unexplained for literally everything that changes as a causal explanation, right? If you're saying that there's a first cause, then you're saying that there's an instance of change that lacks a cause itself, right? That seems like a problem with your view, not the infinite regress view.
No, because there has to be a prime that has no cause, right? It must purely.
But the reason why you said it has to be the case is actually untrue, and seems
Why?
like that's actually warranted against your view.
No, but why?
Yeah, because the view, yeah, you characterized it as if on the view there's an infinite regress. You don't explain change, but you do explain change completely, right? There's no instance of change that goes unexplained. Every instance of change has a cause, a causal explanation.
Yeah.
So of course you're going to have a complete explanation. On the view that's finitist about causes, and that there's a first cause, that things change does not have a cause.
Yes, we can agree on that. That the first cause would have no cause.
That was the objection you raised, though.
No, but my point is this: that there can be no cause if it's
On your view, change comes from nowhere because the first instance of change itself lacks cause.
No, it doesn't. It lacks cause in its actual causality, like it being caused, but it doesn't lack cause as being.
So then what's the problem with the view that
cause.
there's an infinite regress?
Again,
Of course, change is going to be explained. Right? There's no issue of something not being explained. The view literally is saying that the view is inflated such that it's like its cardinality is the set of natural numbers. Right? It's literally explaining everything. There's an infinite series of causes. There's no thing that goes unexplained. So what do you mean? What's the cause for change?
No, but you understand though that if there is this cause, right, then there must. From cause to effect, that means there is a change from that cause to the effect, right? So there's a point 1 to point 2, right? So that cause cannot happen if it's infinite, because every cause must have some sort of beginning, right? So
That doesn't follow. No.
That's just
If
question
anything,
begging.
yeah, if anything, you're just saying that there has to be something that doesn't have a cause, or that's not caused to be a cause. That is breaking causality, I would say.
How so?
Yeah, I mean, your reasoning doesn't make any sense. You're saying that there has to be something that's not caused to have causation, which is just a very queer claim. But that aside, is what you're saying is just false, right?
No.
Obviously, for every instance of change, like I just explained, you're going to have a causal explanation behind it. So there isn't going to be this problem of not explaining change, because obviously there's going to be a change. Everything's going to have, right? The view is that there's an infinite series of causes because how inflated the number of things they're causally explained.
My point on the first cause having no cause, right, is because it's not because it lacks cause, but it's because it is cause itself.
Yeah, it does lack a cause, though.
It lacks a cause because it is cause itself, right? Like if it had a cause,
that doesn't make any sense. Causation's a relation between events, right? And we're objects that stand in events. Causation's a universal, right? Particular things stand in causal relations. Causation isn't. God is an agent. God's an object, right? Causation's not an object. It's a relation between events.
I'm going to have to reject that point. That God is an object. That isn't true.
Object just means a thing that exists.
It's a particular thing.
It's not a thing either. That's my point. It's not a thing.
Well, a thing just
It
means
doesn't
It
exist.
is.
Does it have any philosophical? Does God have any philosophical content, Catholic?
What
What do you mean by
that means?
philosophical content?
Yeah, is it? Does he exist? In your view, he exists.
Look,
Right?
by thing,
Yes.
God has properties such that he's a
No.
thing.
He doesn't
God
have.
has
What do you mean by property? Hold on. Could you define what property means? Because maybe our definitions aren't the same.
Well, property is kind of an irreducible concept, right? God has the property of being good, right? Obviously,
No,
on your view,
No.
he doesn't have the property of being
He doesn't have the property of being good. He is good, right? So that's the difference. If we say that he has the property of it, right, then that means he could also lack that property, which is absurd in the.
Okay, look, he believes the universe exists. He has the property of believing the universe exists.
Okay. Wait, are you
Okay.
saying God is or me?
I'm saying God has that property.
Okay, so God does exist, and God has the. You said the property of God believing that the universe exists.
Look, a thing just refers to something that can satisfy properties. Obviously, to say God exists means there's a thing that exists. Right, that's trivial. Because some phrases, thing is like an object quantified, right?
Catholic,
There's
we're
like
not
something,
we're
not
not
saying those
violating
are
divine
quantifier
simplicity.
phrases.
We're not violating divine simplicity here. We're not trying to. We're just explaining to you that God has a set of.
He affirms ADS.
I'm sure he does. I mean, he's that's what he's trying to. That's what essentially what he's speaking on when he's saying God is good and God doesn't have the property of goodness. God is goodness, right? That's sort of the modified divine simplicity. It sounds like, at least.
Well, ADS doesn't make any sense. But that aside, that's kind of irrelevant to what we're saying, because all ADS is affirming is none of God's properties are different from each other, right?
But he does have property.
Yeah,
And God's identical to.
because they're distinct in nature, but but God is.
Look, let's just sidestep the ADS stuff. Is just going to obscure the conversation.
Yeah.
The point just stands is God. Propositions like God exists is true. So God is a thing that we're quantifying over, right? And saying that it has the property of existing, and that statement is true, right? That's all that means, right? That's how you express that proposition in a logic, that there exists some X such that X is G and X exists, right?
Mm.
So yes, God has the property of existing such that he's a thing because he bears properties. Now that's like very simple. I don't know why that was so difficult to get across. Right? There shouldn't have been any pushback on that. Yeah, God's a thing. Now, what I'm trying to understand really is just the main point about what was it? Now I'm losing
Infinite regress.
track of where we were about the infinite regress stuff. What I'm not seeing is what really is the objection on the view there's an infinite series of causes.
My point in this is that if there's an infinite amount of causes, there can be no change, right? And I can always give an example of this, right? Like I think the one.
But do you agree? Wait, hold on. Before you even explain that, you agree on the view if there's an instance of change, there's a causal explanation for it, right?
Yes, but I'm saying that it's in a logical.
Then your statement is just false because your statement is there's no before you explain, but your statement is that change is not explained, and you just agreed that on the view change is explained.
Wait, when you say explained, I might have
causes are explanation. Causes are explanations. If that wasn't apparent.
Okay, so when I say that cause is an explanation, right? Could you go and elaborate that a little bit more? Because I might not be understanding.
Cause is a type of explanation.
When
I ask, can you explain how the ball got there? You're asking for a causal explanation.
Okay, I understand that. So when I say that there can be no change, right? What I mean is this. The example I was going to give is, I think a popular one is like a stick moving a ball, right? So like if you have that stick, the cause of that movement in the ball is the stick pushing it, right? Now if you take away that stick, right, then there can be the ball won't move, right? So there would be no change. That is the same in this. If you take away the first cause of that, the stick, there is nothing. And that is what infinite regress is, if we take it to that extreme. If you take away the first cause...
No, that's not analogous. That's kind of disingenuous. Because your hypothetical is just taking out the cause. Right? It's a difference from saying that there's no first member in this. Yeah, because you said you're taking out the stick that caused it. But that's not what's happening in an infinite regress case. They affirm the stick, and then they say there's a hand behind it, there's a person behind it, the person... And there's just an infinite series of things behind it. So of course you're still going to have the explanation for the ball, but there's also infinite things preceding that. So of course you're going to have an explanation. The issue couldn't be that, because the view stipulates that there is explanation for everything causally, right? You would just be contradicting the view itself when you affirm something like that.
No, hold up. So let's actually draw that out, right? If we say that all these causes go back on infinitely, so like you said, the hand goes back to the person, goes back to whatever, right? If that goes on for infinity, right? Like that will mean that there is no cause in the beginning. And therefore be you understand that?
Yeah, that's a trivial point. There's no beginning, right? There's no first cause. There's still infinite causes behind it.
You understand that if it goes from the human, the hand to the human, right, or the hand to the person, then that is the cause, which then goes to another cause. If it goes on for infinity, why can there be pain?
There's infinite. You just said it yourself. If there's infinite, then there's infinite causes. It's not. There's no
how
cause.
Are we getting
there's
that
infinite causes.
How are we getting that infinite causes?
Catholic, have you ever heard? Okay,
what do you mean? Wait, each thing's cause.
I think
there's going to be a causal explanation for everything from its previous thing.
How?
What do you mean how?
Because you're just saying
the semantic thesis of infinitism, dog. Catholic. That's the semantic thesis of infinitism. That every single.
It's not even clear what he's even asking when he says how.
Every single effect has a cause infinitely. It's the same way with under epistemology when you speak about foundationalism or infinitism or finitism, right? It's the same idea, right? There's that for X explanation, there's an infinite set or chain of prior explanations, and it goes on forever and does never end, right? The issue here is that there's a divide, right? Obviously, foundationalists are trying to argue that there is a foundation, there is a beginning point and an end point, right? People who believe in infinitism don't believe that. Like that's just the whole point. That is the thesis.
I'm understanding.
There's also
your claim.
Your view is also really. Well, what do you mean? Why is that?
Why is it going on for infinity, right?
Because for everything, there's a cause behind it, and there is no thing that doesn't have a cause behind it.
But
so
if
the span of things behind it, no change. The change of a thing has a causal explanation. So the cause for some things change is some antecedent cause, and the cause for that antecedent cause is another antecedent cause ad infinitum.
Yeah.
But if it goes on for infinity, right? Then where is the cause coming from? Like where? If it
Goes
goes
by your cause.
Wait,
No matter where,
listen,
imagine a
I'm
number.
gonna make this really simple. The cause for any particular thing is its antecedent cause.
Yes, but where you're just there's only two options there. Either the antecedent cause is eventually going to.
You're just presuming your view. You're just presuming there's some uniform first cause, right? I think that explains the causal sequence. The sequence's causes are explained by each member in the antecedent chain under this view. There's not some uniformed first cause. Every instance of cause is explained by its previous cause. Right?
So
not only is this view
any instance of change you're trying to elaborate on within this view is going to be explained by the antecedent, no matter which one it is, right? Like imagine a number line, right? Like a real number line. It functions the same way, correct? Right? If you go to negative a 3, whatever XYZ number, right? There's going to be a prior number and a future number, right? That's what functions the same way. Imagine it that way.
Well, even if we went with the number line, right? Like if we were to go to, let's say, infinity negative or infinity positive, right? We could always just add
a number. It's just.
I'm sorry, what?
It's not a number. I mean, infinity is not a number. There's no negative infinity or positive infinity.
I mean, you should. I don't know how literate you are in philosophy, but there's just too much independent reasons to think your view is just wrong. Because as it stands in philosophy today, there's no controversy whatsoever about the possibility of an infinite sequence. Yeah, that so much so that actually about 20% of cosmologists actually think that there is a past infinite universe. Right? The controversy no longer stands, is it possible? Controversy today in philosophy of physics and cosmology is whether there actually is an infinite series, and every metaphysician endorses the possibility of a view like that. Right? Even people like Craig, who denies the existence of an infinite regress, he actually says it's both metaphysically. He says stuff like well, I actually don't know if he says it's metaphysically impossible, because he gives inductive reasons to think it's unlikely.
Sean Carroll got him to admit that there's no contradiction with infinite regress.
Yeah.
I have a
Okay.
question,
Thinker,
though,
are you
about
a
this whole-
Thomist? Let me
Sorry,
understand.
can I ask a question?
I want to ask Catholic Thinker one question. Are you a Thomist? Or is a Thomist the sort of realm that in which you use your apologetics the most?
I wouldn't particularly say that, no, but I think I could dabble in some.
Okay, but I'm assuming that the majority of your apologetics stem from some sort of classical theist positions, right?
Mm-hmm.
The majority of those, right, are based on all of them, right? Classical theism was born from Aristotle, right? And he has a specific set of metaphysical principles which do come in friction with infinite regress, which is why he argues against those. But I mean, the realm of contemporary philosophy is far different than when Aristotle was around, and the sort of metaphysical principles that Aquinas or Occam or any of the scholastics were operating on, right? It's just it's far different now, right? So that's why infinite regress isn't much of a controversy.
I think you're presupposing.
But he's not even giving their reasons.
I think you're presupposing that because
Most
contemporary philosophies are,
I think it's best we kind of
different.
avoid
It's
to
much
talk
better.
about ancient philosophers' views and just engage.
Yeah, I
with
agree
what
with
exactly
that.
he's saying.
I have a if I can ask a question on this.
I was just saying that
has
because
anyone
Thomas
ever?
Aquinas has
Excuse me. Oh, hello. Oh.
No, yeah, I understand that.
So my question is: has anybody ever actually proved that there was a time, or is there any way to prove that nothing existed? Because your assumption, if you've got a first mover,
Can we kind of
is
just
went
say
from
at one
nothing
point?
to something? I'm
Look,
sorry.
We're trying to, we're just trying to understand his motivations to think that there
Yeah,
can be
but
infinite series
he-
of causes. You're kind of
Okay, monkey
like,
boy, if you
moving
could
the
allow me,
conversation away from
because this is relevant to his question. Because if you've
No,
got
I'm
to
telling
have
you
a
it's
first,
not, and I'd rather just avoid this,
I'm sorry. Okay,
like respectfully.
you okay? Fine. I'll just whatever. I just don't know
Look,
why
so yeah.
you'd assume that there was a time where nothing existed. How could you prove that? And if you don't have a point where nothing existed, then you don't need a first mover.
Okay, but look, we're trying, because obviously the motivations you gave doesn't make any sense. I don't know if that's
I'm
still, if
sorry.
we're still in the wood trying to, who keeps muting me?
Hey, Rev, why are you meeting him?
Who's muting who?
One of my moderators.
I don't know who's muting me.
Oh, I don't know. I just had one question. I mean, I didn't think it was.
Yeah,
gonna
go ahead and hold on,
disturb
Monkey
the
Boy.
whole
Go ahead and ask your
context of the
question.
argument, but
What is your question?
so my question is, if you're going to assume a first cause, then you have to assume that we went from nothing to something. Why would you assume that nothing is even possible? There's no evidence anywhere that I've ever been able to find, and I don't know. I'm not a philosophical expert. I don't go back and read people from the old times. I just think about things. But has anyone ever proven that there's a situation where nothing existed and we went to something?
Well, you're asking me that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so my position is that there has to be a first cause, right? And it's illogical to go on for infinity due to the fact that there has to be there is change, right? And if that's true, then if there is a first cause, there must be something prior to that. Now, again, I've already claimed that it can't go on for infinity. So before there was something, there must have been nothing.
Why would you
Look,
assume
can
that?
we just make this easy and look? I'll just leave, but we're like completely pivoting from where we're at. Like I
Well,
understand you have your
because it's
questions, but
relevant. Why
it
would
seems
you assume that nothing existed?
it's
Why would
hold
that
on.
be an
It's
assumption you
not
would make?
relevant to where we look. It might be relevant to the overall conversation from where we were and where you interjected.
So
It's
you're
not
just
relevant whatsoever.
accepting the presupposition of
Yes,
nothing.
talking about, or
No,
we're
I
talking about.
well, one, I don't even think his view commits to that. But look, I'm saying that we
You
can
just
get
said
to
it
that
did.
in a.
Didn't
Hold
you
on,
just
I'm
say
saying we
it did?
can. No, I didn't hear him say something like that, and he could correct me. But what I'm saying is that's besides the point
He
for
said
now,
it
right?
went
We
from
can of course.
nothing to the first cause. That's what he just said. That you would have
Yeah,
to
we can.
assume that after you go through the infinite regress, go back to the first mover, the first cause, you would have to assume it came from nothing before that. That's what he just said.
Yeah, that's his view that it doesn't
Right.
have a cause. But we're talking about the claim that he's made that there couldn't be an infinite series of causes. Where right now, where you're getting at is kind of completely divorced from where we're at, and
I
it's
don't think so.
very.
Well,
Yes,
I
because we're
think
talking
I think
specifically
what
about that claim.
I think what needs to happen is Catholic needs to provide a contradiction or a proposition and negation for it, and he still
Well,
hasn't done that.
Right.
it's unclear if his claim is even that it's logically impossible. So I'm just trying to make it more broad and
Okay,
ask
well,
what's his reasons to
I
think
thought you
there
go
couldn't
ahead and
be.
clarify your answer, Catholic, if you want to, but I thought you said that there
But
was
if
a point where there was nothing, and then the first cause was when something was created by the creator, and he is that first cause. Right?
but look,
Is
if we
that
want to be more
correct or no?
rigorous about your claim, maybe we can. Maybe I want to avoid this type of language. I don't know if you know what modality is. It's kind of. Are you saying it's logically impossible that there's an infinite series of causes?
Are you asking me that?
Yeah.
Because if you're asking me that, I would say yes. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Okay.
You can try to explain it to me.
Well,
But I'm all
wait,
for
wait,
it.
wait. Doesn't make sense is different. It doesn't matter if it doesn't make sense, right? You can affirm it's logically possible and doesn't make sense, right? Those are like compatible.
Okay,
Right?
well,
Sense
then,
is. I'm asking you if your claim is that's logically impossible, not whether you make sense of it.
yes, I believe that it's logically impossible due to the stated facts, or the stated evidence that I said before.
Okay. And I just want to, just a completely side note, you might not even care. This is like such a robust claim no one today in philosophy endorses. I just want to get that out the way.
That's true. I don't
And
know.
I don't think you
No,
know
Like
it's
his
an,
claim?
that is an absurd overview.
no,
I mean-
yeah, it's true that no philosophers today endorse that view.
No,
That's
that is-
logically impossible.
That is.
Yeah, that
You
is.
know what's the threshold that you have to meet in order to prove logic?
Yeah, I can list to you the contemporary people who will deny there
I
being
don't
an
think he
So
infinite
we're
regress.
going
knows. I don't think he
to
knows.
argue
I don't think he
for
understands the
okay,
logic of
I'll
the
do
threshold he has to
Thanks
meet.
for having me, Tiny.
Catholic, what's the threshold you have to meet to prove
Okay.
logical impossibility?
What do you mean?
The threshold you have to meet. What's the thing you have to prove in order for something to be logically impossible?
You're
We're
asking,
just asking you. So what I'm asking you when I say, because I kind of invoke the term, I can maybe clarify to him what it is I'm saying, because maybe he understands me to be saying something different. When I ask you if you're saying it's logically impossible, I'm saying from the sentence, there's an infinite regress. If that sentence of causes, of course, if that sentence were true, could you derive a contradiction? Meaning a following sentence, the
yes.
sentence is a contradiction. Okay, so the first step is don't give an explanation or your reasons why you think it's a contradiction. The first step is you purporting what the contradiction is. What is the contradiction you think it is? And so we're very precise. This might be prove difficult because this happens all the time. A contradiction's a proposition and its negation. I'll give you an example before you fulfill your task. My coat is all red and it's not the case. My coat is all red. I just declare a proposition and not the case clause in front of that same proposition. You get a contradiction. It's very easy. I have a dog and it's not the case I have a dog. I went to the Super Bowl yesterday. I didn't go, right? So just give me a contradiction now.
Okay. So the contradiction I see in infinite regress is this: that if there was a cause and that cause then had an effect, then there would be change, right? But there is no change because it is an infinite cause, right? The infinite causing meaning that something that's
Oh my God.
counter to it is not going. Does
Yeah,
that
this is going to prove difficult. I don't know if maybe you're attentive at all to what I was saying. And this definitely, look, so again, it's just a proposition and the opposite of that proposition. Like I gave you examples. It's just, if I said that there's a contradiction in there being a married bachelor,
Okay.
right, and someone was like found that dubious, I would tell them, oh, the meaning of the word bachelor is unmarried man, right? So the contradiction I would need to know from them before they explain that to me is I think the contradiction that follows from there being a married bachelor is that there would be married and the guy would be married and it's not the case he would be married, right?
Mhm.
The
All right.
sentence is it's the case and it's not the case he's married is the contradiction, right? Then I explain, the concept contains unmarried man. We stipulate he's married, therefore you get he's married and unmarried. Just tell us what the P and not P is, right?
Okay. So it's the P is there is change or there change, and the contradiction is there cannot be change.
No. The word cannot means there's a contradiction from the sentence. The contradiction could be it's the case and it's not the case there's change on the view of the infinite regress. It's not the case there is change is false, right? Because of course that's like an element of causes, right? And in the view there's infinite causes, of course there's change. So that couldn't be the contradiction you're affirming.
I'm sorry, because from what I'm saying, it seems like I'm affirming what you're saying, right? That
No.
if there is change, or if there's change, but from infinite regress, we can see there's no change. That seems to be a contradiction.
No, there is change on the view. There's an infinite series of causes. That's fairly obvious.
Yes, but how are we getting that change? That's the contradiction that I'm stating.
What do you mean? Well, I've already explained. No, that's not a
The way
contradiction.
we're getting the
That's
change is by any antecedent, bro. Like, oh my god.
Yeah, this was explained ad
No,
nauseum.
I understand that.
For
How are
any
you-
instance, look, there's not an explanation univocally, right? For like exhaustively for change, right? Because on your view, there's a first cause, so you can say that thing is like the cause simpliciter, right? Just like in the most broadest sense, the cause for change.
Mhm.
But that's not a condition of the view. There's an infinite series of causes. Instead, on the view, change is always explained, but it's going to be explained in terms of relative to where you stand in the cause. So if I pick a specific instance of change, that's going to have a particular cause, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So there is going to be, of course, a causal explanation for every instance of change. So of course there's going to be a cause for an explanation for change, right? So that statement's not right.
Okay, I think I'm getting what you're trying to say. But my point is this, that because we will agree that because there is change. When we say that there's cause to effect, there's change. And if it goes on for infinity, there seems to be change, right? But my point is, where are we getting this change from if we're going all the way to infinity? Because there must, I see,
Yeah,
there must
I just said it.
to be how you say.
The change of anything, any particular thing that changes, has a specific designated cause. On your view, you can answer this because only your view has this, and this is not an issue against the other view, right? It's not like, imagine I say, oh, imagine I believe that there's blue walruses, right? Like all walruses are blue, and I don't, right? And you say, oh, your views, can't be, and I say why, and then I say because on your view, not all the blubber of walruses is blue, right? That's kind of like a trivial, right? That's not an objection to the view. So what you can't do to attempt to discredit some view or just motivate a view is just naming a triviality of the view, a truism, right? So saying that on the view that change itself doesn't have some uniformed causal explanation is not an objection, right? So there isn't going to be an answer for that view because that view, that's strictly of the view that there's a first cause. So that's not a problem, right? It's not a problem where a view literally doesn't commit to that they're not going to explain that thing, right? Mm-hmm. So on the view, there's an infinite series of causes. Any instance of change has a designated cause for that change. Mm-hmm. There's no uniform explanation for change. Any instance of change has an explanation though. So in that way, you satisfy explaining change wholly because there's no instance of change that doesn't have a cause on the view.
So I ask you this, right? Like, that example I brought up earlier with the stick moving the ball, right? Where is the change in that?
What is moving the stick?
The hand.
Yeah, there's just going to be the hand.
Okay.
Exactly. So it's just going to be that thing. There's just an infinite series of things behind it.
Where'd the ball come from?
No, but we'll say rubber.
Where'd the hand come from? Where'd the person come from? Where'd the molecules from the person come from? Where'd the cause for the cause ad infinitum? Okay. There would be a series of explanations that lead to that. There doesn't need to be a beginning in that causal series. It's just cause and effect ad infinitum. I don't understand why that's so hard to grasp.
But why is that?
What do you mean? Why is that?
Why does it go on for infinity rather than start with an initial cause? Because we can agree that.
Look, the reason is because there's on the view that there isn't an infinite series. That's because there's something that goes uncaused, right? The reason there's infinite is because for anything it has a cause, right? So then you're not going to stop at saying, okay, this is going to be the thing that doesn't have a cause that explains the rest of the sequence, right? Mm-hmm. That's how you get an infinite because literally. Imagine I just said, how do you get an infinite series of negative numbers? Oh, because the number that precedes -1's -2, right? There's just, for any negative number, there's a preceding negative number. That's how you get an infinite series. There's no stop on the negative line, right? There's no -100. There we go. There's nothing behind it. There's infinite series of negative integers behind it.
Okay.
I don't know how that's difficult to understand.
I think you're trying to compare concepts with the actual reality of things, right? Because there's a big difference between like
what are you talking about?
A conceptual idea of numbers going infinitely compared to like the reality of like the person going back to the mind going back to whatever, right?
No, it has not. You're reading too much into stuff. The point just is there's going to be the same two answers in both cases, and you should already understand and appreciate the answer in the one case. So I'm using that to explicate the same answer in the case that you find challenging. Right? I'm not saying that there's some other like more metaphysically broad analog between the two. I'm just saying that there's a relevant principle out of the two cases that informs the explanation in the case that you're not understanding. That's all.
And what I'm not understanding, right, is you could say it goes on for infinity, but I would like to see what those causes are, because I don't. Where's this infinity coming from? You say that it goes on for infinity, but I could say that it goes until a first cause.
The infinite. Where's the infinity coming from? That was already. If you're asking the same question of I don't get it. If you're just saying how's there an infinite number, it's just because for everything it has a cause. Right? If you're asking some other question,
well, what are?
Because it seems either you're asking a question that's unanswered, that is already answered, or you're asking an unclear question.
No, I'm asking what are those causes, right? Because if it goes on for infinity,
wait. What's the cause for what exactly? Causes are relative.
When you say causes are relative, what do you mean by that?
Specific objects and events have specific designated causes. The cause for why a or a glass of water might have shattered is because a child might have dropped it. What's the cause for that can be a further question, right? But there's the answer for the cause for this is relative, right? When I say the kid dropping it, that's not going to be the explanation for some other thing, right? Like, why did John choose to walk his dog today? Oh, because the kid dropped the glass. Well, that doesn't make any sense, right? They're in two different countries, suppose, right? They don't know each other, right? When I say X is the cause, right, that's relative to what a specific event we're talking about. Specifically, in the case of the shattered glass of water, the cause for that is specifically that the kid dropped the glass.
And my question is this, right? Like, if we'll take the stick and the ball example, right? If we go on for causes, right? What are those causes? I'm asking, what are those causes, right? So, like the effect of the ball moving is the stick being moved is the hand the person, or the arm to the person. And so, and then like the person to the mind to what exactly?
What are you asking?
I'm sorry, what?
I don't know what you're asking.
I'm asking, what are the causes? Like, could you tell me?
He wants the whole process. He wants the whole process. The cause of 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 the cause. It's like,
there's no way you're asking something that, because whatever here is saying that you're saying something really, you're asking a really asinine question, which is to tell me the cause for literally everything in an infinite series, right? Now that's fairly obvious why that's a very stupid question.
I understand that.
Right?
Like,
wait. But to be clear, just so we're clear, that's not what you're asking, right? You're not asking what's the cause for literally everything, right?
What I'm asking. I understand that you can't name every cause.
That's not what you're asking, right? I just want to get clear. That's not what you're asking.
I'm not asking if there is a cause for everything. Is that what you?
No. You're not asking, and this is the question. If you're not asking, quote, what is the cause for every specific thing? That's not what you're asking, right?
I don't believe that's what I'm asking. So
okay, so then you would need to clarify, because that's what he interpreted you to say reasonably. I actually agree that's the most reasonable inference to what you might be asking, and I avoided interpreting you that way in a more nebulous way, because that's the only reasonable interpretation I myself also have, and that's a very stupid question. And now I really hope that you're not mistaken and that's what you're asking. But no one here actually knows what it is you're asking if you're claiming that's not what you're asking. So you have to be far more transparent here, because I'm genuinely trying to work with you and I have no idea what you're asking.
What I feel like what I'm saying is pretty is simple, right? Like, I'm asking, if you were to get these causes, right? Like the cause of the effect, could you like name them out to like just a specific random point, right? Could you, like, from the mind, what is causing the mind to move? Like, what is the cause of the
mind? You mean the brain?
Well, if we're going from the arm to the person and the person to the mind, or maybe that, because I'm assuming the mind is what is moving the person, right? What is moving the mind?
I don't think the mind
here, like, this is going to veer off into so many different commitments on philosophy.
If we think that certain, that is going to veer off into very nuanced philosophy of mind conversation.
No, because this is
if you're talking about intentional causes.
This is the reason why I'm asking that, right? Because if you could,
but look, you're asking, your question is actually irrelevant, like completely, because if you're asking what is the cause, I might not know the cause, right? And it's not a commitment that I can explicate very easily or just tell you what the cause is for everything on the view everything as a cause. That's not needed. So it might be the case I can't name the causes for things, but that doesn't do anything to discourage that everything has a cause. Right?
Everything does have a cause.
So let's just suppose. Well, no, your view is the opposite.
You're a foundationalist, brother. You believe in
wait,
your view literally isn't that there couldn't be an the only way you get that everything has a cause is if there's an infinite series. That's strictly the only way you can get that.
When we say everything has a cause, I mean everything in the
there's no object you can name. No, but see, that's obviously not a constraint we added, right? We're speaking just broadly.
Just broadly,
that's just an unreasonable.
Yes.
Everything meaning literally everything, right? Not I don't know why you would add constraints on everything.
Because
it's like, imagine I'm talking about everything. Cause. Imagine I say everything is red, and then you just say, oh no, when I say everything, I just mean when I say thing, I'm just talking about specifically cars, every car, right? No, obviously that's not what we're saying.
No.
Yeah, but
what I'm saying is,
look, on your view, God doesn't have a cause, right?
yes.
Okay, your view doesn't. Yeah, your view isn't that everything has an explanation.
Yes,
right?
I would agree with that on that sense. When I said everything, I thought you meant the natural world, because we were understanding that if God was not,
that's obviously not everything. There's a thing that, look, there's non-natural objects that don't have a cause. It's very obvious. It's not everything. If there's objects that are not quantified over
non-natural objects, okay.
Yeah. Oh my God. Look. Yes. So I don't. What's the issue still here? For everything, there's going to be a cause. I don't need to know what the cause for it is. Your view is that not everything has a cause. Your view is that the sequence is random because the first thing is unexplained, right? Okay, so what? I mean, it seems like at least I would think most people have the intuition against the view that there's randomness, right? There's bruteness, right? That's why people have the view there's infinite series of causes, because they don't like to think that, oh, there's just things that are random, things that are brute, unexplained, right? They just happen to be there without an explanation. Just God existed for no reason. There's no explanation why God exists, right? He could have just happened to not exist in another world, right? There's just no explanation why he exists, right? That's why people happen to endorse the views that you obviously are finding problems with. But that aside, there's just obvious, all the stuff you're saying just doesn't make any sense. It's almost like obviously not true.
Would you say that God
doesn't change?
Would you say God couldn't exist in another universe? What do you mean by that? Like
I didn't say universe. I said another world.
Oh, another world. Yeah, sorry.
And do you know any philosophy like possible world semantics? That's like a very kind of rudimentary, elementary philosophical.
Sure. Let's say I'm clueless, right? Could you explain to me what that is?
Yeah, we use worlds to talk about specific. There's not going to be an easy way. There's certain domains we can talk about worlds as domains, right? And each modality is a type of constraint on the domain, right? There's logically possible worlds, and what a world there is if we're operating under logical modality, what a world there is a proposition that's consistent with a specific logic system. When I say nomological possibility, or sometimes referred to more familiarly as like physical possibility, is a world there is just some proposition that's consistent with the known laws of physics, right? Right? And then there's others.
Like to kind of help illustrate this. So like in an all possible world scenario, in a world where there is a God, does truth exist in that world? Catholic, this is for you.
Oh yes. You're asking if there was a world with a God, right?
In a world where God exists, does truth also exist in that world?
Yes.
Okay, so in a world without God, does truth exist in that world?
No.
Is that statement you just made true?
What do you mean? Is that statement? Oh, that statement would be true because there is a God.
Okay, so this is the thing I'm trying to illustrate is that in a world without God, I'm asking if truth exists in that world, and you say no, and then I immediately ask you, is that statement true? That would entail it would necessitate truth to exist in that world for you to make that truth statement.
You're presupposing that God doesn't exist in this world.
No. Listen, the only reason I wanted to use this as an example is to illustrate what the all worlds. Yeah, on all possible world scenario, what monkeyboy is trying to explain to you right now. This is an example of an all possible worlds, proposition. It's S5 modal logic, essentially.
We're not talking about S5 specific. That's like in modal logic.
Isn't that? Wouldn't that? I thought that's what all worlds scenario fell into that category. I could be wrong, because I'm, barely
S5 is a
philosophically
specific modal logic system. It's system 5. It's like an axiom.
It's not an all worlds. It's not all worlds wouldn't fall into that category.
No, it's just more generically talking about like possibility and stuff.
Okay, and then I misconceived that a little bit. Okay, good to know.
Yes, so like the whole point here just is that's just what we mean by worlds, right? And now I'm kind of losing track. What was the point of bringing up the worlds? Does Isno recall? What was the last point before?
You were.
Does anyone else?
Yeah, you were explaining in an all possible world scenario. You were trying to describe to him what that was all about.
No, but like, why did I mention that? Because I remember. Is ISO there? ISO or not? ISO. Okay. Yeah. So when I think that's about the logical impossibility stuff. Or I don't know. Because I remember before that, I remember he said he thought he interpreted me as universe, and I said something about possible worlds, to which I then said I'm not talking about universes, and I explained. Can someone in the chat tell me? I have really poor memory, so that explains why I can't recall.
I mean, we were trying to figure out what's the problem with an infinite regression.
You asked about cause. Well, look. In any case, so we're clear. Your claim is just that it's logically impossible, or at least it's unclear if that's really what you want to say. Oh, I think it's because he said cannot, and I said cannot is just using the same like possible world talk. But I don't know. Just so maybe we could get it more set straight. Whether or not we forgot, maybe we could recall later, or maybe we won't. It's just whether or not you're saying that there is a contradiction in there being an infinite series of causes.
Are you asking me that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry, could you repeat yourself?
Yeah, are you still saying that there's an infinite series of causes? Or sorry, that's impossible logically?
I'm saying that it would
be that there's a contradiction.
I'm seeing a contradiction, and I do think it's logically impossible for there to be an infinite cause.
What was the contradiction supposed to be?
The contradiction is that the change cannot, and that there's change in the cause, there is no change in infinite.
No, but we've went over. I thought, yeah, we've already went over that there would be change.
So hold up, I have a quick question. This might be a bit
But we've already resolved that point.
Yeah. So, do you think the start of the universe, right? Do you believe there's a start to the universe?
No.
So you think the universe is infinite, right?
No, I'm indifferent. I don't have a view.
Okay. So would you reject?
The evidence doesn't indicate either, really.
Okay. Would you reject the Big Bang theory then?
No.
Okay. Would you? So you wouldn't affirm it either, right?
No, I would affirm it.
Oh, you do affirm the Big Bang theory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna, hopefully you're not making the same error. But there's like this common misconception about people that the Big Bang talks about the start of the universe implicit, or it's just it's like a type of inflationary physical theory, right? And it's consistent with infinitist views in cosmology. Right? It's not controversial amongst physicists and philosophers of physics that the Big Bang happened. Nonetheless, philosophers of physics and cosmology argue whether there's an infinite past. The view talks about the beginning of the observable universe in specific, but the events before the Big Bang is up to interpretation and question, and it's possible there's an infinite series of moments before the Big Bang.
Mm-hmm. Would you be able to describe what those instances would be or were?
I don't have the view, and I wouldn't. It's not even clear what you're expecting. If you're asking for a physical description of the world, that seems like very unreasonable.
More of if the Big Bang did happen, right? What was the cause of that Big Bang, and what was the cause?
I'm not sure why I think it even had a cause, but supposing it did have a cause, I don't see what turns on not having an answer to that question.
Wait, if it didn't have a cause, then how could there be infinite amount of causes?
No, that's not his view. That's not his view, Catholic. And also, what you're asking is akin to asking you to explain every single attribute or every single mental state of God. It's not. It's essentially it's not going to do anything for you to
look. It's kind of like, imagine on your view that God has an intention to create the world such that it explains why he creates the world, but there's not an external thing that explains why God has that intention, right? And in that way, you can think the same of the Big Bang, that the Big Bang had like a disposition to, or the universe had the disposition to rapidly inflate, and there's not an external explanation for that. But yeah, again, my view isn't that there's an infinite series of causes. Again, I said I'm indifferent. I don't have a view on whether there is an infinite or finite series. But the view is possible, and even more than that, serious philosophers and even physicists today are actually affirming that there's actually infinite moments in the past of the universe, right?
Mm-hmm. All right.
Are you like Hoppian in that sense, where you just think that either or it's still atheism still holds out?
Yeah, I don't see how that's giving any leverage to either position, to be fair. So I don't think, like, if we discovered we had good inferential reasons to think either of the two, that does anything to sway me away or for like stronger in atheism.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, because like Graham Hoppe, I recently bought his book, and he does he has a compelling argument as to say why giving them equal weight in a finitist world, they're both just as likely, and atheism wins out on parsimony due to there's less commitments having to do with the sort of dispositions that would allow this specific world to be instantiated, and so on and so forth.
Or types of existences introduced. Yeah, I mean, I share that sentiment.
All right, I think I'm going to have to study it more into this, and I do appreciate all of you guys for taking your time and helping me to understand this topic a little bit.
You should probably read it. I don't have much suggestions because I don't even know who. Because there's really no one today who's taken serious who says it's logically impossible like you claim. But if you are genuinely interested, well, it's kind of motivated, but that aside, at least so you read some philosophy. You should probably just completely abandon this logical impossibility claim. But there are serious philosophers today who argue that it's metaphysically impossible. I think that's like a whole another can of worms, a problem. But at least you're not saying something like almost obviously false, right? And there's like serious philosophers today who still maintain those views and argue for them in the literature. You know, Craig argues for that, and probably Rasmussen and others you might want to check out.
When you
I
make
don't know
like,
what Rasmussen says. I don't
you have to like sort of like making robust claims, and by robust it doesn't mean you have to affirm, but like even negating specific propositions very like with a very like even universal words like impossible, they usually commit you to having like a pretty high threshold of evidence or some sort of commitment you have to make, like, oh, there's a specific negation, like, or like a propositionist negation within your view, like logical impossibility and metaphysical impossibility, like as a modality. I just see like metaphysic modality seems so redundant to me, because a lot of times when I've asked people to define exactly what the parameters of it is, it just seems like they're defining logical impossibility. But even then, there are serious philosophers who do argue against the nature of infinite regress and so on and so forth. But the claim of, or like the very strong, robust claim of logical impossibility is one which it's just hard. It's basically impossible to affirm it right nowadays, at least, because there's no specific entailment of infinite regress, right, or like an infinite chain of causal events that entails a contradiction. So